You are listening to the Buried Treasures podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe down below. Like, comment, and share your favorite episode with your friends and family members. And please help us establish and build a masjid in Lombard, Illinois. You can go to supportmu.org to make a contribution. Jazakumullahu khairan. Welcome to the Buried Treasures podcast, brought to you by Masjid Uthman, where I interview a new guest every week to discover their journey. I'm Hamza Warsi.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakumullah khairan everyone for joining us. MashaAllah, today we have the guest of all guests. Very special individual. You may have seen him on TikTok. He's known as the TikTok Mufti. Some people call him Yo Mufti. Various names, MashaAllah. Mufti Mohammed Wasim Khan, how are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Hafiz Saab, it's an honor to share this space with you and have this conversation. May Allah reward and bless you for the effort and the thought process on such an adventure.
I mean, Mufti Saab, so tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised, and what were you up to in your early days?
So my parents, they moved to Saudi in the late 70s. Both my father's from Hyderabad, India. My mom's from Karachi, Pakistan. From my dad's side, we're originally Afghan. Yusuf Zai, my great-grandfather, had migrated from Afghanistan. They were in Jeddah. They got married there. And Dad used to work for Korean Airlines. So he speaks like fluent Korean.
Mashallah.
So because he worked in the airline industry, he could travel. So all the kids were born in America. So I was born in Dallas, my sister in Chicago, my brother in Portland, but we didn't grow up in America. Maybe like a few months and then came back to Jeddah. So I actually learned English in Saudi because we were born in America, so we went to American school, and Arabic in America. So we started off, up till I was about 5 years old. I think I did kindergarten in Dallas. I came back because my maternal side lived here. And then we shifted to New Jersey. And once we were in New Jersey, I was there, then went to England after. I was pretty young when I went to study in England, but pretty much grew up. And in those days, it was different because I think there's a lot less of Muslims in school. Masjids are smaller. Still, all of our imams growing up are all, there's a language barrier. Yeah. I don't recall in my childhood having access to a scholar who spoke English as a native language. I don't ever remember as a kid going to a youth program. These YM and the stuff that we did amongst ourselves, that occurred. But we're talking about an imam checking up on me, telling me that, hey, why don't you come to the masjid? Yeah, it's Sunday school teacher and you had this, that lecture you attended to. But that element, growing up, I noticed when I think back to it, right? Because we all make our mistakes and, we all learn from our lives. But in my childhood, that I think was something that I saw a lack of. And then throughout life, I travel. I don't really have family in all the places I travel to. Yeah. It's me and my sister, and then just becomes me. So we're pretty much alone. And as growing up in its madrasa system, and I think that that's one aspect that a lot of people don't realize about scholars when they go to study, that in their prime age, for me, I was just a teenager, in their prime age, when, you have your family affection, you have your parental tarbiyah and all of that, you have the societal understanding, you have your school friends, the relationships are getting built. I don't think people realize how much is given up. I know you have a list of questions and stuff, but my mind just trailed onto something. You were mentioning, when we were talking, you were mentioning how you had asked somebody once that, did you ever want to leave? I think that aspect of just being different, even in the madrasa environment, not having family or having a unique cultural background or something, the aloneness in that journey is something that students who are foreigners or who boarded, they realize that. And whether it's Eid, whether it's birthdays, I don't know what the birthday masala is. This is not fiqh or fiction.
You're the mufti, not me.
But whatever occasions it was, right? You just traversed it alone. And I think there's a lesson from Allah for us as well in this. And if you look around, majority of the scholars and imams are generally from out of town. They're not locals. Locals are not really valued, and there's a host of reasons. But I think like that aspect of it, right? That the mental health aspect of it, of being in a different country like South Africa, complete different language, right? You go from not even the English you speak, you're getting clowned on, right? I remember they'd go to me and they'd be like, it's mulk, not milk. And I'd be like, it's milk. And they'd be like, and they'd make like nasal sounds. And if you ever hear non-Americans mimic Americans, it's so bad. But you are the minority right there. You're the one person. So you don't have the like luxury ability to be like, no, you're wrong. Because everybody's laughing. They're making fun of you. So it's that whole aspect of it. And I remember at times just wanting to, when we would go back home, all of our friends are still like, they're in that phase, right? They're in that like rebellious phase. So religion is something that is weird at that time.
Yeah.
So you go to madrasa. In madrasa, you have this aspect where you're different. In my time, I was one of the few Americans. And when I was in England, I was the only American student. When I'm in South Africa, in my class, I'm the only American. When I started off in Zakariyya, there's probably 2 dozen Americans. When I leave 5 years later, there's over 120. So there are fewer of us as well. And then age group as well. So all those hosts of challenges, I think that's something that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to understand and realize what it goes through. And I think a lot of the challenges can also just be alleviated by someone just checking up and asking, like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, how is it? We see all these kids that travel and study. And then we're like, oh, mashallah, they're going to study deen, right? But we don't like just see beyond like what it actually means.
Yeah.
South Africa, somehow the scholars there made even the local populace understand the value of people studying.
Mashallah.
So our madrasa is in Zakariyya Park, and adjacent to it, like 5-7 minutes away, is some place called Lenasia, or Lens, it's known as. In the apartheid time, is like basically land of Asia, because all the Asians were there, and to him Lenasia. So you have a lot of Muslims in that area, about close to 30 masjids in that area, hundreds of scholars, maybe 400, 500 scholars. So like there's a certain qadr. When we used to just walk into the mall and we're trying to purchase something or order food, and there's a person just walking by and they hear the different accent, they'd approach us, ask us our name, tell us, you must come home. You must. And it's not like, hey, you should come over. And we're like, yeah, inshallah. No, it's like, you must. Take my number. When are you coming? Is Saturday good? I know your school is off at this time. Can you come for lunch? Come and spend the night. People, I spent more nights in people's homes and strangers in South Africa than I probably did in my own relatives' homes in America. So when we came to South Africa, that one aspect was unique from a community perspective. It's because like we couldn't afford the ticket to go back home for Eid. But for example, the Bandur family, may Allah reward and bless them. They would have their family Eid and they would bring madrasa kids and give them that feeling like their family. And like I'm telling you, there's not a single person that will make you feel out of it. On the contrary, they'd come and they'd push you and say that, why don't you come often? They get upset. This time around, I went and I visited, and there was this family, and these guys are not wealthy, Hafizab. They're really like, they work in gas stations, they work in jobs where they get minimal pay, but the hearts were incredibly generous. So there was this one home in Ellsberg. It's one of the original towns where the Muslims started from, at least in the Joburg area. The person that used to invite us, I think they used to call him as a nickname, Abdullah Fulfulo. That's what they used to call him. So he used to always and they'd spread they'd place a huge spread down for us, food and everything. And we used to go and eat as madrasa kids. he passed away like a year ago. Yeah, a guy in his like probably 30s, late 30s, early 40s. So when I went to visit, I was with some of my students, and said, "Look, we're on the way to the airport. We'll stop there. Give condolences to his elderly mother and father. They're like in their 80s or something." We stop over there to give condolences and dua. And while we are sharing words of closure for us and for her, she is worried, and she keeps on saying, "What can I give you to eat? What can I take?" And we're like, "We're not here. We just had food."
Yeah,
While she's crying, she goes into the room, grabs a box of chocolate, comes out, and she gives it, and she says that, "Please, I'm so embarrassed that I can't give you anything." And we're like, this is not even in grief, the hospitality was immense. The generosity was remarkable. So while I know we're going to talk about the teachers of South Africa, and we're going to talk about the different elders and scholars, but the community deserves absolute recognition for being literal ansars to our metaphorical hijrah. Hafiz, we used to we couldn't. I remember days when they used to have these things called kumbis, and you'd stuff people inside. It's like a van, like a 15-seater van, and the taxi cost from the madrasa to the mall would be like $1, right? 80 cents, and we couldn't afford that, so we would hitchhike. And again, strangers, it was dangerous to hitchhike. You can get kidnapped, anything can happen. But the community understood and saw students like that. They'd pick them up, take them to where they needed to go drop. The culture was so appreciative of the fact that people come and study deen in their country. And I hope to see in Chicago, because Chicago, this is some type of hub over here as well. And in the local areas, when you see that different student, someone asked me, what are some of the things that occurred in your life, your parents' life, that may have made Allah propel you in this line? I said, well, I don't know. There's a lot of things, but one thing that I know my father did was that whenever he would enter any hifz class, he'd put money in the hands of the teacher, the students, whatever little he had. And I believe it's just that muhabbat in these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends that acceptance, at least to go on the path. But I'm sorry, I know I went on a full-on tangent and
no, man, yeah, you just drank up a few of my questions anyway.
I'm so sorry about that.
No, that's not a problem. So, mashallah, one thing that always kind of interested me is you went at the age of 12 to go study?
England, I was probably 10.
You were 10, subhanAllah.
10 or 11.
Did you know anybody there?
No.
Not a single soul?
No.
Did somebody at least drop you off to England?
Yeah. My dad.
Your dad?
My dad, and there was another scholar that met us there. Maulana Makki Hijazi of Makkah was the one that intervened for my admission in Blackburn.
MashaAllah.
England was difficult, was because I was really young, and 9/11 had just happened. So I went in after that, and it was really tough being the only American Muslim, and I went for hifz, and hifz is brutal.
Yeah.
Right? The hifz culture, it's dog eats dog over there. Hifz is brutal. But I think even from a madrasa's perspective, whether it's bullying, whether it's or having some sort of counseling or something, because a lot of the kids are missing home. I remember what a phone call meant to talk to my mom. I remembered that my dad came to visit me one time in Blackburn, and he sat on the 4th spot to do his wudu for Asr Salah. That's it. And he left. After that, that was the only spot I sat on. That's my memory of my dad. And talking on the phone, there was just so much emotion, especially how much you thought about family and how important family was when you were younger. So sad now. Now we have the phones and we're able to call. We don't call as much, and that's. May Allah give us hidayah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to use the blessings that we have. But yeah, that was England.
MashaAllah. So why did you want to go
memorize Quran?
My brother was a hafiz of the Quran,
Inshallah.
and dad always loved scholars, always had people over. So he was like, hey, do you want to do hifz? And I was like, yeah. So he told me, he's like, there's a place in England called Blackburn. I mean, mind you're an 11-year-old kid. England, what the heck is England?
Yeah.
Blackburn, you're thinking of, all you know about England is Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yo, what is this thing? I was like, all right, whatever. I was like, till this day, I don't know why I said yes. But dad was like, hey, it's a good idea. You should go. He didn't force me.
Yeah.
I went. Started off, I had a few teachers there. I had Maulana Arif. I had Hafiz Ghulam, Maulana Jawed Bika. Interesting enough is that Maulana Jawed Bika studied in Darul Uloom Zakariyya.
Oh, mashallah.
And he was my last teacher there. And then I came back to South Africa on studying. His brother was a year ahead of me in Qari Noman's class.
Oh,
I think it was Zakariya Bika. But I remember while studying Hifz, I think things were going well, largely. And Hafiz Ghulam was teaching me. Qari Ghulam. It was تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. And there's a waqf lazim there.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me when I was doing Nazira reading, this is waqf lazim, stop over here. And either I had never seen a waqf lazim before or what the situation was. He said, go back. And all I said to him at that time was, why are you doing this to me?
Oh, wow. SubhanAllah.
He took that offensively and rightfully did. And he had me out of the class. But that day I felt as if I disrespected my teacher and something left me.
Mm-hmm.
16 years later, I found him.
Inshallah.
And I met him. And I said, do you remember me? He said, yeah, vaguely. He's like, I remember that little childish face.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. And I said, I just want to come and apologize for what I said as a kid.
SubhanAllah.
And he was like, I don't even remember this or anything. I was like, I know. I was like, but it's been a weight on me throughout my life. And the crazy thing was, like, even Mufti Abdul Samad, the principal of Blackburn, when I saw him after 16 years, it was Fajr time. I sat down and I said, Assalamu alaikum. Salam salam. He said, who are you? I said, I want to see if you remember. And he was like, he's like, I can't. I was like, I studied here 16 years ago. I was like, I was from America. He's like, Wasim? And I could not, like, I just couldn't believe the fact that that's a crazy memory, man. You teach hundreds of students over the years. Yeah. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. And like this man. So England was and is definitely was special. It was also, I spoke in the Jalsa in England over there as well. There used to be a Maulana Abul Haq. His son lives in Houston. He was a Sheikh al-Hadith. He used to have milk and bread in his room, like, because he lived alone. Mm-hmm. And every Sunday, I'd go with some excuse of a question or something just to cap some milk and bread for him. But like, even then, right? Like, these people aren't slow. They're like smart. Yeah, sure. But they put up with those antics, like, yeah, out of care for a student or for whatever reason it was. But yeah, that was England.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So then you left England after how long?
I was in England for about a year.
About a year.
I was in England for about a year.
And when did you change paths from memorization to the Adamiyya program?
So I went back to school. Okay. Public school. And then in public school is where, like, it was a different culture. Yeah. From a conservative family. So now I'm discovering different people. I'm discovering, like, okay, everything is not as, goody two shoes as we know it is. Mm-hmm. So I had a very, like, downwards path in getting in trouble and getting into fights and just like I think I was like expelled on the last day of school. Like, it was bad. Oh man. Yeah, it was bad. And I thought to myself, like, all right, I should go to madrasa because it's going to, by the time my report card comes home, I'll be in madrasa, so like I won't get whooped. And like my parents will be like, oh, mashallah, he's doing something good. It'll even the sheet out. Yeah. I don't really expect to sit around for 6 years after that. So when people ask me, like, must be some noble story, you saw a prophet in your dream, something, like, no, bro. I was just trying to, like, avoid getting whooped, and I went, and hopefully, even in that fake and false and misguided and misunderstood intention, yeah, Allah just chose to, like, be like, you took that step, even though You didn't mean to.
Mm-hmm.
And he pushed it forward.
I mean, like, so why did you stop your memorization? How much were you able to accomplish?
Very little. Probably memorized like 2 juz. I had a weak memory. And for me, I'm a very logical person. Something has to make sense to me.
Yeah.
Blind following and just Ji Hazrat is not really something that I believe in or I can do. Memorizing the Quran without understanding for me was just a task that I felt that I could not do.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'd rather, and then I also didn't want people to explain religion to me.
Interesting.
I wanted to be able to be the person. The way I work is that if I know how mechanics do, then I can develop something in my own image.
Mm-hmm.
If I know this is what salt is supposed to do to the flavor, this is what garam masala does this. If you have that understanding, then you can compose any curry.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I go and I ask about religion and these things don't make sense. How people explain it. And I'll give you a simple example, right? That following a madhab.
Yeah.
And I would ask people, okay, why do we have to follow a madhab? And people will give you some very intelligent people will give you some silly answers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is Jannah and there are 4 roads. And this is and at that time, it just sounds like, why are there 4 roads? Like, where did those roads come from?
Yeah.
Right. So people's approaches of explanation were just so flawed. And that's what really made me be like, no, I want to know why. I want to know it for myself. I don't want people to tell me this is what you're going to do and this is what's going to happen. I want to be able to assess it myself. And that's why I truly enjoyed studying and I truly enjoyed just this lifestyle. It's because of the fact that you really get a chance to understand why you're doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I tell my students all the time, for me, I don't listen to lectures often. I should listen to them more. But when I go for namaz, when I go for salah, and you just hear the Quran in its raw message, no barrier. You're understanding your prayer like you're understanding what I'm saying right now.
Yeah. SubhanAllah.
And when I realized that a lot of people can't do that, for me, that's my passion, that just learn Quranic Arabic because I want you to feel what I feel and I want you to really enjoy. But at the same time, I'm highly impressed by the iman of the youngster, that person who stands up in qiyam, prayer, and all of this without understanding a drop of the language and still standing there.
So after England, you studied in New York for a little bit?
Yes. I studied Arabic, introductory books, introductory fiqh. I did up to Hidayah, and then I shifted to South Africa.
Okay, mashallah. So how was that shift over to South Africa from studying locally and then now studying abroad again?
Well, it was a much larger institute. It had a diverse group of students from all over the world, which I think is incredible, to live amongst so many different backgrounds, build relationships and connections in so many different countries. The teachers themselves were also very diverse. Local madrasas generally struggle with the challenge of hiring diverse teachers, obviously because of just it's very expensive to run a madrasa, especially in America, right? It's super expensive, cost factors. There's a lot of elements of sacrifice that people who run madrasas make, which also comes at the talent you can hire.
Yeah, because
of that, So a lot of madrasas revolve around family owned or teacher and students from the same institute. It's usually that circle, but in South Africa it was different. The Maulana Shabir had plucked scholars from different parts. Sure. And every one of those scholars was just absolutely remarkable. At the time of going there, I don't think I truly understood how amazing these people were. These guys didn't have a website. Sure. I found out through Darul Uloom Zakariyya was because there's another Maulana Murshid. He does real estate right now. He was studying, and I was trying to find whatever institute he was studying, and I was trying to go to that one. Oh, wow. I was like, he's my friend. So I called Azadville, and I asked him, I was like, hey, does Murshid study here?
Yeah.
And they're like, there's no Murshid here. I called Zakariyya. I said, And it's expensive because it costs money to call South Africa, right?
Calling internationally.
It's calling internationally.
Yeah.
Years ago, this is like super expensive, right? So it's just like, please get to the point. Like I'm just time, like this time is
60
money.
seconds.
Got
Let's make it
60
happen.
seconds, yeah. And then I called Zakariyya, and Zakariyya was like, we don't know who Murshid is.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right. I was like, I'm not going to call Azadville back now. I was like, just since this is the second one, khalas, just enroll me in here.
Yeah.
And I had read about them on Sunni Forum, and I'll talk about that in a second. What I didn't know was that in the Bangladeshi culture, they usually have two names. Murshid was the name that we knew.
Yeah.
And the name that he gave to the madrasa was Sami. And it was Azadville. So he was in Azadville. So all I knew about Zakariyya was that one of my teachers, Mohammed Mois, his teacher was there. The other thing was that I had read on Sunni Forum, right, on this thread, that there was a teacher who could not afford a pen during their student days. So he committed everything to memory.
Allahu Akbar.
And this was like quoted by Mufti Ibrahim Desai about Maulana Choksi, because Mufti Ibrahim Desai's teacher is Maulana Choksi. I wanted to meet that man.
Yeah.
And the second thing was that they said that there was a young man who was like, at 8, he became a hafiz. At 15, he became an Aalim. And he's been doing iftaa ever since. And you can take any hadith and say it, and he'll be able to recall which book, what page, and all of that. Like phenomenal photographic memory. So I wanted to see this young man. And that was Mufti Bacha. I don't know if Mufti Awais, but he's a phenomenal Mufti, but an absolute genius. So that was one of my primary reasons of just going to madrasa based on.
He finished his Aalim course when?
When he was 15.
15 in his hifz?
8.
Allahu Akbar.
Sheikh Sudais, when he was in his second year Aalim course, Sheikh Sudais came to Zakariyya and was testing him on fiqh. And he was responding in Arabic, and Sheikh Sudais gave him $200
Subhanallah.
in the 90s. This man is out of all of Darul Uloom Zakariyya's graduates, Mufti Awais Punjabi. I mean, the guys we call Mufti Bacha, he hates that term, by the way. But he's the absolute apex and the absolute genius to have ever exited. No student, neither before or after him, was on the caliber of Mufti Awais Punjabi. To the point that and he is the one who has understood Mufti Radha and Mufti Radha's academia and approach like no other. He's now the right hand of Mufti Ahmad Khanpuri, who is the teacher of Maulana Choksi and many of these senior scholars.
MashaAllah. So you just go on Sunni Forum, you call 2 madaris, and you're just like, all right, cool. Let me just go make it happen.
Yeah.
Right? I can't find my friend because he has 2 names that you don't know about.
Apparently we weren't good enough friends for him to share the second name with me.
MashaAllah. Yeah, like how was that, process of like just flying over to South Africa? And your friend was in a different madrasa, so you didn't know. Did you know anybody at Zakariyya?
So there was another Maulana, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of people's kindness, right? I think Maulana Mateen Butt in Canada, he knew I was going to South Africa, so he reached out to Maulana Ubaidullah Qadri, who's now resides in Florida. He reached out to him and he said that Wasim's coming. Just try to help him out.
Mm-hmm.
So Maulana Ubaidullah Qadri, his brother Maulana Khalilullah Qadri studied in Azadville. So they had a car. They were very instrumental. My mom flew with me. I mean, we're going to Africa, right?
Yeah.
And like, we're legitimately thinking, like I'm telling my mom and sister, like, stay behind me. If there's an animal, I'm like trying to read like how to immobilize a lion, how to tackle an elephant, like all of these like hacks, right?
Yeah.
I'm genuinely, and I don't know that it's a dangerous country.
Yeah.
All I know is that we're going to Africa. I packed a bunch of shorts. I was like, it's probably just going to be like kurta and shorts, right? And I get there and it's like a pretty civilized country.
Yeah.
Pretty dangerous, but pretty civilized. I came there. My mom was with me. My sister was studying in the other madrasa. Mom helped me settle in. Darul Uloom Zakariyya gave me like a very like warm welcome, and they were very just very kind. Mom stayed for a few days or a few weeks, and may Allah really reward her. She put a lot of sacrifice. When I was talking, one of my aunts was crying profusively one day. So I asked her, I was like, yo, everything okay? And she's like, yeah, my son just went to Seattle. I'm like, okay. I was like, I thought like, that's it? She's like, yeah. So I asked my mom, I was like, dude, we're traveling so I was like, never seen you cry like this. And she was like, I did. She's like, I just never let you see it.
MashaAllah.
She's like, when you guys would be in madrasa and I'd remember you, I'd come into your room and just sit by your bed. She's like, but I could never tell you how much I missed you because I did not want you to feel weak in what you went to accomplish.
Subhanallah.
Like, I've met awliya in my life, man. But mom is the wali of walis, man.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
When you talk about a sincere heart, a clean heart, amazing character, phenomenal khidmah, even till this day. I mean, from IIE to all the madrasas, their kids locally have come home, they spend time, and mom has always been there.
MashaAllah.
Never heard her ever be frustrated or anything. Like, those values that she embedded is something that I'm eternally grateful for. And dad as well. Dad's a big factor. Like, saw dad around scholars. And that's why I was like, hey, if I want to earn this man's respect, then this is what he's respecting. So this is what I have to do. One time, Maulana Salim said this. I spoke in IIE when I first graduated. And it was when Tarawih used to happen in
1280. I was actually there.
Were you there for that talk?
And you came with Maulana Zakir. Or Qari Zakir.
Yes,
He
sir.
did recitation as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I remember this.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So after that talk, obviously, like, we're still fresh, right? It's not as many scholars as there are now. Seeing a 19-year-old kid talk is like pretty interesting in those days.
Yeah.
So, and then plus because my father's friends and all of that were all there, Hajis, everyone came around and everyone came to receive, and Maulana Saab was there. And I remember Maulana Saab, in his Maulana Saab way, was like, "Ye iska kamal nahi hai." Right? This is nothing good about this guy. Iske maa baap ne ulama ki jutiyan uthai.
MashaAllah.
He said his parents picked up the shoes of scholars and khidmat. And that's why Allah has given him anything.
MashaAllah.
And I genuinely believe that has a huge part, the khidmat my parents have done for scholars.
MashaAllah.
That I got this for free.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah, man. That's some beautiful words that was said. MashaAllah.
You're just being nice right now. You don't remember what I said.
I actually remember exactly what you were speaking
No
about.
way.
No joke, okay? Qari Zakir, mashallah, recited from Surah Taha.
Okay.
Right? And then you were mentioning the story of Sheikh Abdul Basit Abdul Samad. And you were saying
The Tsar in Russia?
Yeah. And how the heads of the Soviet nations, they started profusely crying at the recitation of the Kalam of Allah without even having any iman in their heart. And you said the same ayat, the same verses that changed Umar bin Khattab, when have the ayat of the Quran touched you? I remember that. It was Ramadan, mashallah. So don't tell me I don't remember it.
No, you're right. You're right.
It was very specific too, the analogy that you made.
Yeah.
Because I've heard the story, but connecting it to the story of Umar radiallahu anhu is something I didn't hear.
It's that those were the days I read Ahwal al-Qurra, and that was the story I used to say in those days.
Yeah.
You're right. You know, on a side note, Mufti Radha, in South Africa, there's a culture people go to ulama and ask for advice.
Yeah.
If you ask Mufti Radha for advice, he'll just tell you that, tell me advice from the last 5 people you asked advice from.
Oh, subhanallah.
And no one remembers. And he'd be like, yeah, you see advice, you forget.
Subhanallah.
Ask for dua, because dua never misses.
MashaAllah. But mashallah, like I remember listening to you and I was just like, man, this guy's a very like captivating speaker as well. And subhanallah, like, you know, a few years after that, we like formally got introduced to each other and stuff, mashallah. So going back to South Africa, I mean,
I don't think people know this, but like we've been roommates too.
Yeah.
Unless that part's getting cut out.
I'll leave that in, but I don't think we want to share the stories of that.
We go way back. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. So, you know, going to South Africa, getting on that flight over with your mom, your sister's there, did you have to take some sort of like entrance exam, or your credits got transferred from New York? Like, how was that process?
Yeah, so I did have to take an entrance exam. Qarishi Dabelia took my exam. Flight was long. It took us 18 hours. We stopped in Senegal from JFK. We stopped in Senegal for refueling. Straight into, like, that was the longest flight.
Yeah.
Insane.
MashaAllah.
We get to Joburg. Qarishi Dabelia. He's, I believe, he's classmates with Mufti Ibrahim Desai. Also student of Maulana Suleiman Choksi. So Qari Rashid takes my entrance exam. May Allah reward him, because I know one place I did mess up. But he put me in. And then the curriculum in New York was pretty solid.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of books that they did that weren't done in even Zakariyya, like Mukhtasar Ma'ani. And there were a few other books, Tajreed, and some things that Zakariyya was, they appreciated that and were impressed by it. So alhamdulillah, entrance was smooth. Class style and structure was different is because the teachers were a lot older. The students were a lot older too. So in South Africa, I was the second youngest in my class.
Oh, wow.
Of a class of 50. Everybody else was much older than I was. I'm telling you, when I first walked in, I thought my classmates were my teachers.
No
Because
way.
they all had like big beards and they're walking in and I'm like, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Like, I remember one of the guys, like, he started cracking up and he was like, what are you doing? I was like, is he the teacher?
Yeah.
They're like, dude, when you see the teacher, you're going to know it's the teacher. That's all they said to me. And I'm like, yo, what the heck does that even mean? Everybody's got big beards over here. It was so confusing. And then Maulana Choksi walked in.
MashaAllah.
And like, I had read about him. I mean, like, again, we didn't have camera phones then, right? So like, there was no picture of Maulana Choksi.
Yeah.
And I see him and I'm like, it don't look that intimidating, right? I was like, I've heard all these intimidating stories.
Yeah.
And then Choksi started talking. And then I felt, and I was like, yeah, this is the man, right? Like, he had a crackle in his voice, looked, what is up? Where are you from? Ganseo. I said, oh, America. Chatike. And then, like, it's just like, I'm imagining, like, America, wow, tell us about it. It's like, okay, continue. I'm like, America. I'm from America.
Did you catch that, Mossab?
Dude, I came in with my like I forgot what that clothing brand is called. South Pole? Is that what it's called? South Pole?
Yeah, South Pole. Generally it's like a super baggy hoodie.
This was it was Calvin Klein. I had a baby blue it was the year of baby blue.
Okay.
I don't know if that was a year or not, but at least in New Jersey it was. I had a baby blue Calvin Klein jacket, baby blue Timberland boots.
Oh, wow.
In Africa, yeah. So like, you could just look at me and be like, yeah, this kid is like, he's definitely like something's wrong with him. And that just like, I'm from America feel.
Yeah.
No one cared twice.
No one batted an eye.
No teacher was like, America this, America that. They were like, oh, cool story, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, continue class. Students, yeah, obviously students thought it was cool or that. Some students cracked on you. But the teachers, it's just looking right through that and understanding America to just be a country like any other country. As a foreigner was like, especially when you go to Saudi and you work and you go back home and you see how people treat Americans differently. It was thought provoking.
Yeah, sure.
And then it made me realize that these people, they're here for just one purpose, and that is that they're not here for me. They're not here for anyone else. They're genuinely here to fulfill their obligation to Allah and walk out.
MashaAllah.
And that's all they care about.
MashaAllah. How old are you at this time?
17.
So you're 17 years young. MashaAllah. You're walking into a madrasa. You get placed into which year?
Fifth
year. So yeah, fifth and sixth year. Your final
seventh.
Fifth, sixth, and seventh. Sorry. Yeah. Did you have to learn Urdu as well?
Well, I already knew Urdu.
Okay, you knew Urdu.
Yeah,
okay,
I knew Urdu, and then I actually learned how to read and write Urdu fairly quickly. Learning Urdu was quite easy for me.
Okay,
it took like a few weeks, but
yeah,
it was pretty easy.
Okay, mashallah. You walk into Darul Uloom Zakariyya in your baby blue Timberlands, baby blue Calvin Klein jacket. You know, when did you?
Such a tool. Such a tool. I'm thinking back to it right now. If I saw me at 17. I would go back and I would say, Sharam karo. Like, you know, like, God, I can't believe I looked in the mirror.
MashaAllah. So how was it, you know, like, were there any similarities in terms of dorming lifestyle from Zakariyya and England? Because those were both, you know, madrasas that you went to overseas. And, you know, you mentioned some of the students were a bit older. You were the second youngest in the class as well. How was the dormitory lifestyle?
England, it was like different floors. You have, you know, either the Aalim course, younger kids, Hifz class, different floors. Zakariyya was like different buildings.
Oh, wow.
It was much bigger.
Massive, mashallah.
It was much bigger. In England, everyone was pretty much British. So they may have they may be like, we had a kid from Hong Kong, we had a few other countries, but they all were English-speaking British people.
Yeah.
South Africa, the diversity was insane. Malaysians, Indonesians, Thai, Brazil, Argentina. It's like, I barely heard about Zakariyya. How did you hear about it from Brazil? There were 13 countries in my class.
MashaAllah.
There were over 60 countries at Zakariyya in the time we were there. What I don't understand is, how did you hear about Mufti Radha in this madrasa sitting in your country, where my only information about this place, after Googling the heck out of it, is like few lines. How did you get this? And that's what makes this place so unique, is that what was it that Allah turned people's hearts towards it? Zakariyya got its website after I left.
SubhanAllah.
They didn't have a website in my time. So it's definitely like there was a big difference. The madrasa was also pretty massive. The story of madrasa is pretty interesting, is that it's a huge chunk of land. And it started off with just a small house. It's the third madrasa in South Africa. Now it spans over so many acres. But the vision, like, I had asked the vice principal, who was there at the time when the land was bought. I asked him a few months ago. I said, when you bought so many acres and you had like 5 students, I was like, did that thought ever cross your mind? Like, I think we did too big.
Yeah.
Like, Zakariyya is big enough that you can get on a horse and gallop around it.
MashaAllah.
There's ostriches on it, goats on it. Over 1,000 people live on it. Zakariyya is massive.
MashaAllah. I'm
like, dude, in 82, is there no way that you thought to yourself, like, this 24 acres is too much? I don't know exactly the acreage, and we only have 5 students. And he was like, no.
MashaAllah.
He's like, we figured we'd use this place. And I was like, subhanAllah. And we were at a jalsa in Darul Uloom Zakariyya. And the original guy who paid the 200,000 rands, Abu Batia, or he helped collect it, he was there as well.
MashaAllah.
And in America, you have all these board members and these things, whenever something big or even they have to come, they have to grab a mic, they have to say something, they have to come in front. This man paid for the land, everything, but neither in the Bukhari Khatam, neither in the Qiraat al-Sab'a Khatam, neither in the Hifz Khatam does he come forward. He's in the back. Neither does anybody on the mic be like, oh, we want to acknowledge him. He was like, you did your good, move on. Your reward is from Allah, not from me.
MashaAllah. When you were in Zakariyya, something unique that I've gotten to know about you as well is that you have a special relationship with many of the ustad. Can you speak, Mufti Alauddin Saab, rahmatullahi alayh, recently passed away, and there's very few people who can tell you much about him because he didn't allow any of the students to get close to him. And mashallah, you were able to have a relationship with him and a certain amount of closeness with him. You visited him a few months ago as well, mashallah, before his passing. And not only Mufti Alauddin Saab, like there's so many of the teachers that you had a special bond and special relationship with. Can you share with us a little bit on how you got close with your teachers, and just share with us a bit about your teachers?
So my father had drilled one thing in my mind: respect ulama. First thing. Second thing, your teachers, you need their dua.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was that if that person taught me, then I would focus on the good and ask Allah to conceal the bad, which everyone has. But at the same time, if my teacher said anything to me, yelled at me, scolded me, upset, I never ever let it into my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I never disrespected a teacher. So you brought Mufti Alauddin rahmatullahi alayhi up. His wife actually was telling his son, Maulana Qasim, that Wasim Khan was the one that Mufti Alauddin hated so much. But he didn't stop, he didn't quit until he didn't force Mufti Alauddin to love him.
MashaAllah.
And it took years. Because Mufti Alauddin, rahmatullahi alayhi, it wasn't that like he was a mean person.
Mm-hmm.
It was just genuinely that he felt emotions should not get involved. And this relationship that we have is for Allah's sake. And that is absolutely it. I don't want you serving me. I don't want you doing my khidmat. And he was the eldest teacher.
MashaAllah.
So I remember when I used to flip his shoes, because the teachers would come, they'd take their shoes off, and then they'd step into class. Because the classrooms were pretty much like, you step out of the classroom, you're in the courtyard.
Yeah.
So shoes are left outside. And the students would generally flip the teacher's shoes so that when the teacher comes out, the shoes, they're able to put their foot in right without having to turn around.
Mm-hmm.
That little thing is what we as students prided ourselves, especially in Zakariyya, that we are nothing. This khidmat of the teacher, maybe Allah will give us some knowledge or something by making a small ease in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they save this 1 second, they're going to do some dhikr or solve some masala, read some book, or do something more important. And hopefully Allah will give us the ajr of that. Mufti Alauddin, rahmatullah alayhi, when he saw me do that to his shoes, after that day, he would begin coming, turning around, taking his shoes off, and then entering.
So the shoes are already straight.
The shoes are already straight. He saw that happen, and the next day, he turned and started doing that. Like, didn't even be like, don't do it. It's like, other times he told me, don't touch my shoes.
MashaAllah.
If I was walking behind him, don't walk behind me. Carry on going forward.
Mm.
And then he wanted to see, like, it's just, why is this kid trying to gain my attention?
Yeah.
So I remember one time, we're still young, right? After Isha Salah, there was dua happening or something. You have your friends around with you, someone's messing about or something and joking around, and I start laughing. And Mufti Alauddin sees me. He sees like the other 6 kids laugh too, but like he doesn't hate the other 6 kids. And me, he does not like me at all. And Mufti Alauddin's like Afghan, right? So Mufti Alauddin yells at me in front of the whole school, all teachers, everything. And I remember even in class, he stopped looking in my direction a whole year. So in the evening, I would come and sit in front of him. Because like you can't avoid a person in front of you.
Yeah.
He'd look right and left, but would not look at me. And I didn't quit. Carried on, always trying to say salam, smile. No matter what happened, I'd always return back with a smile.
Yeah.
And then years later, the relationship built and it became really strong. I left and I called him one year and I said, Mufti Saab, I know you taught thousands of students, but if you ever remember, do dua for me, please.
Mm-hmm.
He said, never ask me to do dua for you. Every day I make dua for you, your father and brother in tahajjud.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
And I was like, I'd go to his house and he had this piece of Kaaba cloth that said, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum on it. And I saw it for like 7-8 years. Our relationship spanned almost a decade and a half. So, and I knew he's Afghani, right? So they've got that proud nature. You ask them for something, they'll give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at it and I was like, that's really nice. And I was like, who are you gonna give it to after? And he was like, this one. He's like, I don't even know if it's real. Then he calls me. He's like, come to my room. He's like, there's something that I have that is more better than this. I said, better than the Kaaba cloth? What could you have? So he's got this closet in like his little library area. He opens it. He's used to teach in Makkah. He pulls out this cloth. He takes a scissor. He cuts it. It's a white cloth. And he says, this is from the interior of the Kaaba and it's 300 years old.
Allah.
It's from Sultan Murad's time. He's like, I got it when I was teaching in Salatiya. He's like, this is yours. He's like, in the late 70s, they were doing construction on the Kaaba.
Yeah.
He's like, I picked up these stones. He grabs a hammer. He breaks it. He said, these stones are yours.
Subhanallah.
Like on the spot. His teacher, Allama Binori Rahmatullah Alayhi's turban, he was showing it to me, picks it up, gives it to me, says, it's yours.
MashaAllah.
And like, it's the generosity of the man, the straightforwardness of him, no frill. He wasn't, and no filter.
MashaAllah.
But at the same time, when he prayed namaz, if you prayed next to Mufti Alauddin, you could feel concentration in your prayer just by standing next to him. The way he would pray, he would come, he would stand, his composure, his demeanor, like they had their life figured out, man. 2 decades he's inside the same home, same place, left the building, left madrasa maybe 5 times in 2 decades.
Subhanallah.
He didn't go to dawahs, didn't go to anything. One of my classmates was having a dawah at Maulana Makki. He said, Wasim, he's like, try to get Mufti Saab to come. I was like, all right. I went to Mufti Saab. So I was like, I just have one tooth over here. I can only eat aloo. I can only eat potato. I said, Mufti Saab, they'll make it for you. He's like, and we'll give you door-to-door service, meaning we'll pick you up, drop you off. Yeah. One time he mentioned in class that, this is the adab of taking an elder. If you want to take somewhere, give them door-to-door service. They shouldn't have to figure out their ride. Mm-hmm. Sure. Especially in South Africa. It's there are elder scholars, GPS and all of that. So I told him, I was like, I'll get you this thing sorted out. I'll get you door-to-door service. We'll have the food. So I was like, okay. 2 days later, I met him and I said, Mufti Saab, I spoke to Maulana Shoaib, everything is ready. The day before I went to him and I said, Mufti Saab, we're going to go tomorrow. It was the third time first time I brought it up, second time confirmed it. Third time. He looked at me, he said, you're pressuring me. He said, this is against my usul, this is against my principles. He's like, I don't do this. He's like, you know what? I don't leave the institute. I don't go to dawahs. I don't do this. This is against my principle. You're pressuring me. I need to reassess this relationship.
Oh, wow.
And he just leaves. And I felt as if the earth underneath me split.
No.
I was absolutely enraged at Moshe Pandur. And I was like, Pandur, I was like, God, Pandur, why?
Yeah.
I was like, you legit made me take a fat L for this. And I'm just really broken. Mm-hmm. And then, I see Mufti Ali, I still try to smile, whatever, like a day or two goes by. And then he comes by Darul Ifta. He sees me. He said, did you eat? And I was like, and in madrasa, like, did you eat is literally meaning like, did you eat a minute ago? Because your refresh rate of your metabolism is quite high in madrasa. I was like, and I obviously knew, I was like, Mufti Ali is asking me, did you eat? The answer isn't no. The answer isn't yes. The answer is no.
Yeah.
I was like, no. And he was like, come over after Isha. I was like, okay. Then he tells me, he says, every day I do muhasabah. I reflect on everything. And I reflected on our conversation that I had with you that time. I understand that you were saying it genuinely and you weren't doing it to pressure me, but you were just trying to make a classmate happy. We're good.
MashaAllah.
And he went. But like, there's this care. Now, today, like, parents can be upset with the kid for a lifetime and it doesn't bother you. Mm-hmm. Like, for us, it was like, okay, like, literally our du'as are like, Ya Allah, please make my teacher happy with me. MashaAllah. And I think what the respect we gave our teachers, people don't even give their parents anymore. Like, caring about those things, reflecting that, why is this person not happy with me?
Mm-hmm. You've shared so many stories of Mufti Alauddin with me. But there's a specific story, I believe his son.
Yeah.
If you can, that I think that's one of the things that you told us when you first got back from South Africa. And it just...
So Mufti Alauddin, so like the way madrasas are, especially like madrasas like Zakariyya, is that teachers, students, everyone just lives together. So our Fajrs and Jummahs are like identical. Mm-hmm. Same amount of people. Maybe Jummahs is less is because the students are leading Jummah other places. So the teachers, students, you see them 5 times a day. When you're in Aalim course for 7 years, you're like living with people for 7 years, right? Everyone's your roommate. So Mufti Alauddin's eldest son had studied for 7 years, was also very smart. He was the smartest in the class.
MashaAllah.
And when you get first place, you end up reading the last hadith of Bukhari in your graduation. So he was scheduled to read the next day. He was graduating. And he had 2 other friends or 3 other friends in the car with him. One friend had just finished his 60 days fast of when you break a Ramadan fast, the kafara. Yeah. He had just finished it. The second one had some amanat that people had left with him, that, those uncles and aunties, we call them funkles and funties because they're fake. Not fake like they're fake people, but like they're not a real uncle and aunties. Yeah. So he went to return the amanat. Mm-hmm. So they were coming back the night before the graduation. The next day, Alauddin's son is supposed to be the one that's going to read the hadith and graduate for 7 years. And they meet up in a car accident and all 3 pass away. Oh, no. 3 or 4 pass away on the spot. The whole school is traumatized, crying, teachers, students. I wasn't there. It was a few years before me. And it was truly a sad moment, right? Teachers cannot, this kid passes away the day before his graduation. It's like, it's tough. So Mufti Muhammad Ali went to break the news to Mufti Alauddin that your son has passed away.
Yeah.
So he goes in, he hugs him, and he says, your son has passed away. And Mufti Alauddin pushes him back and says, Kyun ro rahe ho? Allah ki di hui cheez thi Allah ne le li. Why are you crying? Allah gave it and Allah took it away. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And Mufti Alauddin told me himself, he said, I didn't cry. He said, in Fajr, the Imam read, Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. He said, and a tear dropped then. Fast forward a few years later, I'm teaching Hadith. It's Sunan Tirmidhi, the second volume. The Hadith of Ifk happens. The Hadith where Aisha radiallahu anha is accused of adultery. I'm reading it and I hear a wailing sound. I look up and I see Mufti Alauddin shaking and crying. And he says, we all are shocked. This man didn't cry for his son's death. And he's just bawling out. And he says, read. In his deep voice, I'm scared. I finished reading, gets up, closes the book, and he walks out. Like they genuinely believed in. When he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, it came from Allah, but went back to Allah. Dude actually believes it. He really believes that his kid's in a better place than he was at home. Enough to not cry. Mufti Alauddin told us something once. He said, we don't claim our teachers were the smartest. We don't claim they were the most pious. We don't claim that they were the greatest. But what we do claim about our teachers is that they all had Allah in their heart.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
Like, they worked sincerely. And then their families did too. Like, when I was teaching in IIE, I realized how much sacrifice the family has to pay. I remember I told Mufti Alauddin's kid, Qasim, he didn't hear from his father as well. I told him, I was like, you know what your dad told me one time about your mom? I was like, tell your mom this. And he's like, what? He said, your dad told me, we were talking about marriage and all of these things. They'd always clown me on marriage. Mufti Alauddin would always clown me. Mufti Alauddin told me one time, he said, if you were to bring all the women from the first to the last woman and present them to me, and I know what I know about my wife today, he said, I would still pick her above all the women in creation.
MashaAllah.
That's love.
That's deep, man.
That's love. And whenever the students or anyone came, Auntie was like, dude, she dropped a spread. And every year when Mufti would finish teaching Tirmidhi, he'd invite the entire class to his house to eat food. And what was the food? The food was tharid, what the Prophet liked. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like, what is this guy's life built around? Like, even his dawat is like, even a party in his home is a lesson of life for you. That, what's the whole point? This is how you make tharid, and this is what you should eat tharid, and that's it.
Allahu Akbar.
Like, it's these guys are different, man. These guys are just, especially Mufti Alauddin. Like, I just have this image of him, elderly, this very noor face, walking, and I could still till today when I would visit back. You know, the man would have chemo in the morning and would still teach.
Allah.
I saw him this time, and his memory had faded. And I asked him, I said, do you remember me? And he would call people, like, instead of calling them an idiot, he called them a ghora, a horse. He said, Ghore. He said, horse, how do I? He said, of course I forgot you. He's like, how can I forget? He's like, I called you a few months ago. He's like, I never called a student. You called me one time in my entire life.
Wow.
One time.
MashaAllah.
For me, it was like I woke up on a Sunday morning and I was like, a call from Mufti Alauddin, a WhatsApp call. I was like, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
Speaking on phones, I'll just give a side story of Maulana Suleiman Choksi. Met Maulana Choksi this time. And he's like, I have a cell phone now. And I was like, okay. I was like, and we're talking, and he's like, you know, he's home alone. His wife has passed away. His kids are other places. One of his daughters is married to Maulana Jawed Bika, his teacher's brother. He says, he takes his phone and he says, Mufti Saab, I was on this phone and I was looking and I pressed one thing by accident and this picture of a girl came up.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately I called the students and I said to them, remove this. I said, Sheikh, this is Google, YouTube. And he said, I don't care. Take this out. And he showed us on the phone, like, look, I don't have none of these things. And I said, Sheikh, you are a scholar. You are this, you are that. I was like, you're scared of just having Google and YouTube? You don't even know how to do the sin in Google and YouTube. And I said, you're alone. You're surrounded by books. You're this mother. He said, Mufti Saab, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Fitna is fitna. Enticement is enticement. It doesn't matter. The man does not know. Like I can guarantee you, he probably does not even know how to use any aspect. Type in English.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know how to activate sin. But an accidental glimpse for him was more weighty than the haram we watch and we indulge. And that's why, like, books I could have studied anywhere. Knowledge I could have gotten from anyone. But seeing people like this who walked on earth but lived in Jannah were just different, man. Like, you see them, not one teacher, Qari Saleh, wife and kids passed away in the car. Imagine your wife passing away next to you, your kid witnessing this. Qari Rashid's wife passed away as well. Mona Deola's son, Ismail, died in a car accident. You can pick which family in there you can pick, and there isn't some problem and there isn't some test that Allah hasn't given them. But beyond all of that, Mawli Hamza, beyond all of these things, they were not capping when they prayed, when they turned to Allah, when they actually did it, bro. There's just a different vibe arriving at 10 minutes before Fajr, everyone in dhikr, everyone in their zone.
Yeah.
And you just get that feeling and you're like, I don't know about the rest of my life, but I know that for the next 10 minutes, my Allah is going to be happy with me.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
But yeah, I'm sorry I keep on going on these long answers and tangents and
you're
responses.
You're completely fine, man. Don't worry about it. This is kind of the stuff that I was trying to get out of you anyways. All the other conversations we've had on the side is kind of finally recorded, you know? So mashallah, you know, while we're on the topic of teachers, right? An interesting thing, we'll kind of jump around a little bit. When you finished your Aalim course, you mentioned to me that you were looking to do some type of specialization.
Yeah.
And you were originally not planning to stay in the madrasa.
Yeah.
You were looking somewhere else, but you ended up staying. Can you explain that part of it and why you ended up staying? And can you share with us about Mufti Radha al-Haq?
Yeah, so I wanted to go to a bigger institute, change of environment. I contemplated Deoband.
Mm-hmm.
I called Maulana Yasser up at that time, Mufti Yasser.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, you have to do Dora Hadith again.
Yeah.
And there were hosts of it. He gave good advice in those days. And I wanted to do it anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I wanted a different badge on me.
Yeah.
Dad really wanted me to do it by Mufti Radha. Dad is a hard man to impress. And Dad's been around a lot of scholars and a lot of the legends. But Dad was smitten by Mufti Radha. And Mufti Radha doesn't talk a lot. He's a very quiet person.
Mm-hmm.
But Dad was just blown away. Dad's heart melted there. And Dad was like, you know what? I want my kid to do it here. And he was trying to convince me, but my mind was elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So the day before my graduation, Mufti Radha sees me in the masjid and he says, can you come to the house after Isha? I need to speak to you. I said, okay. I come after Isha, sit down. Mufti Radha says, your father told me to ask you to do iftar over here.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to let you know that it doesn't matter to me and I don't care. But if you do it, you'll benefit.
Yeah.
I was like, great prep talk. I was like, that absolutely amazing prep talk right there. And I was just like, that was just enough for me to be like, wow, Mufti Radha brought it up in a conversation. That wasn't even like, he wasn't even convincing me. He basically told me like, you do you. Like, I don't really care if you do it. But like, you want to do it, it's great. You don't want to do it, it's cool too.
Yeah.
Your dad told me to tell you this. And then I stayed in iftar from there. And then I traveled a lot with Hazrat Mufti Saab. I went to China with him, Masjid Al-Aqsa with him, Hong Kong, Jordan, Umrah. Mufti Radha can't see from his right eye, I believe. No, sorry. He cannot see from his left eye. In one eye, he can see 25%, and the other eye, he can't see. Mm-hmm. I can't recall exactly which one. Every day at Tahajjud time, he'd open his eyes. He'd look at his watch in the dark. He'd rise up, do wudu, and pray his Tahajjud. I did not see that man miss a Tahajjud. I saw the man on a trip. Like, I traveled extensively with just me and him. Mm-hmm. And just the humility of being like, you're the Grand Mufti, you're the big shot. And a kid comes to you who's like 19 and says, hey, you're trying to travel somewhere? Yeah. And he's like, yo, fine, I'm down. And I learned so much in just the human aspect of Mufti Radha. Bro, imagine us being in China, lost in a city. They don't speak English. We don't speak Chinese completely. We're out of it. And out of the blue, somehow there is a guy over there that knows Farsi.
Oh, no way.
And Mufti Radha and him began conversing in Farsi.
Yeah.
And that's how we get directions to get out of the town and figure out how to get back home. Because there happened to be one guy from China who decided to go to Iran and get stranded there and learn Persian. And it just happened to be that Mufti Radha knew Persian.
Yeah.
But it's a different man. And then like when we would do Umrah, there would be just people coming and be like, is that Mufti Radha? And I was like, I didn't get it. Mm-hmm. Why people were so smitten. We were in Masjid Al-Aqsa. After the Imam heard his lecture one time, the Imam used to wait for Hazrat Mufti Saab to finish studying, reading, doing his Ishraq, and then every morning the Imam would walk with us and Mufti Radha. Mm-hmm. And after Mufti Radha's first lecture, people were waiting and wanted him to speak every day. Mufti Radha said, no, one time, that's it, khalas, it's done. Mashallah. Special person, man. Special individual. Very affectionate. He's mentioned me, I think, in 3 of his books. 2 stories he repeated and one other thing, but he mentioned me by name. I took a book to him one time and I said, Mufti, can you sign on the top? He said, your name is inside. What do you need me to sign on top of the thing? But Hazrat Mufti Saab is every day at Tahajjud time, he eats the food of the madrasa.
MashaAllah.
Did you know that?
I didn't, no.
Yeah. Like I could not stomach madrasa food.
Wow.
Mufti Radha for 3 decades has been eating madrasa food. Because his family stays in Pakistan. And he uses his finances to fund a girls' madrasa because he doesn't get a chance to teach girls here in South Africa. Like he teaches them, but like not as much.
Yeah.
But he runs his own, like you teach at a madrasa, the salary you make from teaching at a school, you start another school to help the needy.
MashaAllah.
I remember when I was trying to get Mufti Radha to come to America.
Yeah.
I needed to fill up on the visa form what his income was. So I asked him. He tells me a number. And I was like, yo, I'm going through the government. I should see with my own eyes. I was like, Mufti, I need your pay stub. Mm-hmm. He gives it to me. It was like double that amount. And I was like, it's double the amount. He's like, oh, I haven't seen it in like 7 years.
Allah.
I was like, what? He's like, I don't check how much I make. It just goes in the bank. And I was like, and I use it for other expenses.
SubhanAllah.
The books that he prints, the books that he writes, I myself with my own eyes have seen him buy his own book he has written to only give it as someone as a gift.
MashaAllah.
It's not like he tells the school that, oh, I'm giving them as a gift, it's promotion, it's marketing, it's this.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like he would specifically buy his own book, support the madrasa that's making money off of his work that he's put time in,
Allah.
only to give it away.
MashaAllah.
Like, and these people were just different, man. I remember one time I walked into Hazrat Mufti Saab's home, and there was now that he was getting old and knee problems, they had just built like a little stump and put a water faucet for wudu. As soon as we walked in, I was like, this is new. And the first thing he says to me is like, yeah, some friends got together and they paid for this. He's like, we didn't use madrasa money. It wouldn't be right to use madrasa money for my personal benefit.
MashaAllah.
First thing that comes to the man's mind.
MashaAllah.
It's like, no. I just want to ethically put this out.
Yeah.
That I didn't do something.
MashaAllah, man. Jazakallah khairan for sharing that about Mufti Saab. I also wanted to ask you about Maulana Makki.
Yeah.
You mentioned him, his mizaj, his demeanor. And, you always just shared with us that everyone's just scared of the guy. Like just his overall like presence is just very intimidating at times. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
So that's intimidating feelings called ru'b.
MashaAllah.
The Sahaba actually say that the Prophet ﷺ had this ru'ab to him, this awe. He just struck. When Moy Choksi would just step in, the whole institute would go silent.
MashaAllah.
And Moy Choksi was like, again, very similar to Mufti Alauddin. Didn't like students doing his khidmah, didn't like people doing things for him, would not accept gifts from students. They would not take stuff from students. Why is that? He would say that if you want a gift, if you want to give me something, give it to me after you graduate. So that, like, even a hint of questioning sincerity, even a hint of it went against their mission.
MashaAllah.
I remember trying to give Marna a tray of mangoes, and I went to his son Harun al-Rashid, and I said, he's like, Dada, you have to give it yourself. I remember how scared I was in just trying to give him a gift. And subhanAllah, like, Marna was very principled. His ibadah, his worship, his style of teaching was very, very principled. His diet, his conversation, the time he gives you is all very allocated. He invited us for breakfast, and I had students with me. And you know what the Hajib thing was? This last trip that I went, out of all my trips, it'll always be one of my most special trips that I have ever done. And for me, it was really special. You've met some of my students, friends. And these youngsters too, like, I got to give it to them. Like, when I said I'm going to Zakariyya,
yeah,
man, they dropped like over 2 racks, and they were like,
man.
we'll come.
Great group of brothers, mashallah.
Very good kids.
Mashallah.
They came to Zakariyya, and the respect and love the teachers gave these young boys, and not only like the love they gave them. We're in Kruger National Park, which is the largest like safari.
Mm-hmm.
Hours and hours of just open animals. They have something called the Big Five. And obviously everyone wants to go to a safari and see a lion.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. I remember Marna Shabir calling and specifically asking, how are the kids doing? Like, the man's busy, his whole life, everything.
Yeah, sure.
We're at Kruger, and he's literally asking, his Maul Yasser was next to me.
Sure.
He was like, Mia, did you guys see a lion yet?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Marna, I said, we haven't seen one. And he has a joke. He was like, Mia, you're the lion. What lion do they need to see? I was like, Marna, do dua that we see a lion. He's like, inshallah, you'll see a lion. I swear to God, Hafiz Saab, I kid you not, literally a few minutes later, a car passed by. We asked him, did y'all see lions? They said, up ahead on this turn, there's lions over there.
Mashallah.
And within half an hour, we saw lions. We saw every major animal, or almost all the major animals in Kruger National Park within like 3 to 4 hours.
MashaAllah.
And, Qari Ayub, I'm pretty sure you've heard amazing stories about him, Qari Saleh and all of them, and the younger teachers as well. Mo Abdullah Bamji, Qari Zaid, Qari Mubin, Mo Junaid, Mo Talha, all of these absolute, Mo Sulaiman Mullah. Like, we went this time, right? And like, we wanted to take the teachers out to the nicest restaurant. And me and Maul Yasser wanted to do it. Well, I wanted to do it. Maul Yasser hears that all the teachers like, will come through. It's exam times, man. They don't have time.
Yeah.
They have to grade hundreds and hundreds of paper in a matter of days. They pull out time. They drive like 40 minutes to Santon.
Allah.
We get there. Maul Yasser is like, Wasim, I'm going to split this with you. My students hear about this. They tell us that, Mufti, we want to also get the reward. So the teachers come. It's a really nice restaurant. And one aspect is like, we're talking about like filet mignon and like,
Yeah.
and we're from America, and the rand difference is like, it's minor for us. It's not a big deal. And we're like expecting like, all right, it'll be a fat bill, but alhamdulillah, like how often do we get a chance to do this? Okay.
Yeah.
Qari Ayub comes there. And like just the way these guys like, he takes control of ordering all the items. Now, obviously, like from his own side, his compassion and wisdom is like, he orders things that obviously further reduce the bill significantly.
Sure.
Instead of getting the most expensive things,
Yeah.
he balances things out incredibly well to like this, even in there, that compassion.
MashaAllah.
When the time comes to pay for the bill, they're not taking money.
Oh, no way.
So I tell Qari Saleh, I was like, Qari Saleh, what's going on? Qari Saleh comes to me, he's like, Wasim, he's like, calm down. He's like, let me talk to them. So another thing Qari Saleh does, like I just, the compassion they had for us, man. Qari Saleh goes to the guy to talk to him, to be like, give this guy a discount, basically, to me. Like they don't. First of all, they're so conscious in what they're ordering.
Yeah.
When we want to spend money,
Yeah.
they're very conscious about it. Not only that, they go to ask for a discount without us asking. Like they could be like that could be their moment to be like with their friend or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
But fate had a different outcome of it all, and that was that the reason they weren't accepting the bill was that Qari Saleh was like, Wasim, there was a student that studied by me even before you. And he happened to be in the restaurant.
Allahu
and he saw
Akbar.
all of us there. He picked up the tab and he left.
Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah, man.
And like the teachers gave our students, like Qari Saleh, like all the teachers, like when all the young scholars and everyone's sitting there, they're chilling, they're joking, whatever.
Yeah.
Qari Saleh comes and sits by my kids, like my students.
MashaAllah.
And he's there the whole time, just focused on trying to see if they eat or they drink. He's
Okay.
talking to them. He's communicating with them. He's like, they all made them feel so special, man.
MashaAllah.
Like the respect they gave,
Yeah, mashallah.
well above what I deserved or what we deserved. Opening their homes and just looking after us, checking up on us. We did a lecture. And I tagged some of these kids and they were just talking about it. Bro, the ustads messaged me after and they were like, we watched it. It was so good. It was like, your time is so valuable.
Allahu Akbar.
And I feel like I've literally wasted your time. But their encouragement, their support, sometimes if there's something that I have done, that is a mistake of mine, Mona Shabir, one of the teachers would message and say, you did XYZ thing wrong. Like even till now, like they care about like, this is something that, okay, you need to figure this out and do it more right.
MashaAllah.
And for me, that's priceless.
MashaAllah.
But I'll tell you one, two other things about Mochoksi, since we're on the topic of Mochoksi. Mochoksi is one of the teachers that gives like the most practical advice.
MashaAllah.
And not only does he give like practical advice, his advice you remember. And the man's got an incredible grasp of the Quran. And this man has the ability to tie anything to Quran and make you so reflective and put you in a spiritual state that even if you're shopping for vegetables in Walmart, he can sit there and pluck out ayat to put you in a trance and a state and reflection of Allah while you're standing in the fruit and veg aisle. And he has done it. He has done it, man. And when I sit by Maulana Choksi, when he begins advising and talking, it's like he understands the depth of the situation and his wisdom that he imparts. A few words of Choksi are enough for a person to go back, reflect. Like this time around, when the students came, like Maulana Choksi is a super senior teacher. He's in the kitchen making chai, making breakfast for us. And he's giving us all this respect. He's washing his own dish. And then he tells me, when I'm trying to get up to do something, he's like, no, the maqam is different. Now you're a guest.
Allahu Akbar.
And I'm like, and you see your ustad, right? Like my body's like in this awkward position where it's like, I want to do something for you. At the same time, I'm being so honored by you. And it's like, if this is you, imagine the Prophet himself. Like if I'm blown away by just these men who are not even 1% of a Sahabi, who isn't 1% of the Prophet. And all we are doing is just tasting what the Prophet's company could have been like. And that's what I go back to that point of what Mufti Alauddin says. And he says this, he says that that's all we claim, that we have Allah. And that we try to follow the sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ as much as we can. You brought up a story of Mufti Alauddin. It's another thing, I'll bring it up. And I don't know how you're going to organize this afterwards, but there's one time that like my beard was like so low, right? And if you know madrasa culture and things like that, it's like you don't do that. So I walked into a madrasa, and I have a policy. When I'm in Zakariyya, I don't talk about masalas or anything. I'm a student there. So I'm visiting back, and one of the kids in Mishkat asks me, they're like, yo, your beard's kind of low. And I'm like, yo, I mentioned a scholar who was also very senior, who also had a low beard. And I was like, yo, go ask him, right? And I shouldn't have said that. But it was just the moment, and I just responded to like, tell the kid to like, hey, chill out, man. The kid decided to go tell Mufti Alauddin.
Oh, no way.
And Mufti Alauddin, let me put this in place for you now. Why is this so bad for me? Mufti Alauddin never touched his beard, which was also naturally pretty solid for a guy who never touched his beard. And he told me one time too, he's like, don't touch your beard, right? And he didn't like people playing with their beards. He used to say like, it's not going to go anywhere, don't touch it, let it be. So he tells Mufti Alauddin. Mufti Alauddin meets me outside the office, and he says, a student told me this transpired and you said this. Immediately I was like, Mufti, I am so sorry. I should not have spoken about fiqh or any of these things in the presence of our teachers and all that. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not talking about what your opinion about the beard is. He's like, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm disappointed in you that you thought it was a credible evidence to say such and such scholar did it. He's like, don't you know the actions of scholars is not credible evidence? He's like, I'm disappointed that you have weak evidence. And I'm like,
MashaAllah.
And he disagrees with my position.
Yeah.
But yet he's not calling me out on the position, but disagreeing on the structure of my argument.
MashaAllah.
And still teaching me while he disagrees with me. He's still teaching me even in disagreement.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
I remember Maulana Choksi, like, he had a certain presence in his class. And when he would do tafseer of Quran, or he would speak about hadith, he never focused on like, you know how like in other classes you'd go to say Imam Abu Hanifa said this, Malik, Shafi. His classes weren't like that. So he's not telling you like what's the opinion on raising the hands or folding the hands above the navel, below the navel. He doesn't talk about that. He focuses on what's the whole purpose. Why even raise the hands? Why even place it? He used to talk about the mansha. What is the message Allah wants to give to you? Take that reflective note of it. And he used to always drill that philosophy into our mind, that anything you see, look beyond all the differences, look beyond all the academia, and don't forget that there is an innate purpose beyond Allah's not going to ask you on the day of judgment. Mufti Alauddin would tell us that he's not going to be like Imam Abu Hanifa was right in this masala, Imam Shafi was in this. But it's how you did it. It's the purpose behind it. What it provoked you to do and become.
Yeah.
So that was Maulana Choksi's one of his like highlighting factors. And again, like he was a very practical individual, very disciplined person when it came to his food, when it came to his diet, when it came to his travel, just incredibly disciplined. And another thing was that like what I really liked about Zakariyya teachers was that they didn't sit there like hyping people up, and they didn't sit there criticizing people either.
MashaAllah.
So like a scholar's name could pop up and they'd be like, MashaAllah, it's good. Or they could be like, yeah, may Allah put barakah. That's it. It's not sitting there being like, oh, we have to bash this scholar. Or it's not like, oh my God, there's no one like this in the world. In my time in Zakariyya, I never heard them take a person's name and attribute totality in greatness to them. For example, this was the greatest scholar, or this was that. They acknowledged they were great, but perhaps there were others greater. We just don't know them.
MashaAllah.
And the ability to understand that while our elders are absolutely remarkable, they are humans and they make mistakes. I think that lesson out of Zakariyya was one of the biggest lessons which made me internalize and understand the whole concept that while we give utmost respect, while we acknowledge our seniors, we also acknowledge that there is a possible human element and people can make mistakes. And if this person makes a mistake, they also know as a scholar how to rectify the mistake. But that lesson for me really opened my eyes, because I also believed that on a personal level that, yeah, people could be good, but apotheosizing people where the person is no longer valuable, it goes against our tradition. And this is something that I genuinely appreciated. And, Moshe Shabir did an amazing job of just getting absolutely amazing teachers, getting amazing guest speakers. We used to have a lot of remarkable imams of haram and scholars that used to come and visit. Like Marna has really, Hafiz Bashir and them, that they've really, there's no doubt that the efforts that they did in that area of Zakariyya Park has transformed the world forever.
MashaAllah.
This Dar al-Salam, this whole thing that you see here is a drop out of Zakariyya.
MashaAllah.
And just the way there's a Dar al-Salam here, there's hundreds of them across the globe.
MashaAllah.
With remarkable scholars doing remarkable work in remarkable places.
MashaAllah, man. Jazakallah khair for that. So kind of going back a little bit, you spoke so much about your teachers, and mashallah, I just remember this passion that you had to just share with everyone. You just grabbed every person that you could come across. Like, do you know about my teacher? Yeah. Like, let me share with you about them. And
still till today, man. Like I asked my students, I'm like, yo, how many teachers do you remember? Which name do you remember?
Yeah.
Because like for me, wallahi, and I genuinely mean this, like for me, I hope it's not that they're seeing me. I hope I'm just that conduit that connects them to my teachers.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm just that translator in between. But otherwise, like, I'm nothing. And wallahi, I mean it. It's not just like I'm lip service. I'm nothing. These people are just, Lawla murabbi ma araftu rabbi. Had it not been for these men, I would not know who my Allah was.
Inshallah.
I'm indebted to these people. Like, not only have they like saved my dunya, they saved me for eternity.
Yeah,
and the help they've given me, I've been able to help so many people. And like, dude, this I just don't have words to say what these people have done. And I can guarantee you that like out of all the good they've done, they don't think about it for a second.
SubhanAllah.
They don't sit there. We've never heard in our student days where they were like, yeah, we've accomplished this, we did this, we did. No.
MashaAllah.
That humility aspect was always remarkable.
How was it going into your final year of studies?
I remember Maulana Shabir told us in the beginning of Dawra Hadith. So Dawra Hadith is basically, for those who don't know, it's this entire year where you do the siyasat, Sahih Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah. Not every institute covers them cover to cover, but Darul Uloom Zakariyya covered 5 of these cover to cover. We did Nasa'i, we did Shara Ma'il Athar, we did a few other books as well. Maulana Shabir told us in the beginning of the class, he said, this is going to be the best year of your life.
Inshallah.
Bro, when we would sleep, we'd have dreams of having the teachers teach Qala Qala Rasulullah. Like you hear Qala Qala Rasulullah so much that even in your dreams, morning till night, all you're hearing is Qala Qala Rasulullah, Qala Qala Rasulullah. And the emotions and just being around prophetic words for 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, it was the most remarkable experience of my life. And then finishing those books, understanding that, okay, our journey is coming to an end now. Like 7 years are really over.
Yeah.
Standing in a room with your classmates. See, in America, and when you're in American madrasas, classes are smaller. Everybody's local, so you can kind of meet everybody up. Mm-hmm. We knew that the last day of class was also the last time we'd all be in the room together. Allah. We knew that for a fact.
Yeah.
That we would never, ever again, all of us, be able to get together. That feeling of it all just going, it ending, life beginning, entering the community where people now see you as you saw your teachers, and you're like, wait, what? I'm like, no. Sorry, man. Then you realize that there's nothing else to do, is because unfortunately you're the epitome that, and we realized that perhaps like there were better people. There were people that, that who truly deserve this. Myself, I don't deserve these things. But it's that experience of hadith, that experience of reading all of these just in the raw Arabic language, right? Mm-hmm. We wouldn't sit there translating each hadith. We would just read through aspects of it and hearing the love the Sahaba had, hearing the effort it was used to document it, hearing the intricacies of debate and discussion. It gives you this profound appreciation for your religion and the depth that it carries. So Dora Hadith, and Hadith has always been like a special subject for me. I was actually telling, I don't know if I told you this or not, but I'm teaching Shamal al-Tirmidhi at Isra right now. And Shamal was what Mufti Alauddin taught me, rahmatullahi alayhi. And after I taught the first lesson last week, Mufti Alauddin was obviously in my chain to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then after the class, one young man comes to me and he says, you mentioned Mufti Alauddin. I was like, yeah. He's like, that's my uncle. No. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, 2-3 days ago I was at Isra, I went home. And I told my parents about you. My parents were like, yeah, one of our relatives, Mufti Alauddin, taught him in South Africa. He passed away a few months ago. And I was just like, it just brought more proximity to me. And just, subhanAllah, like, he did a good deed when I was a kid. Now Allah has changed the situation where I'm going to do a good deed for his family. Like,
you also have a copy of his...
I have a copy of his Shamal. I jacked that. One of my classmates, Ismail Hunsa, gave him a really nice copy that he was using. So obviously his OG copy he wasn't using. So I went to him, I was like, Mufti, I was like, can you give me your copy?
Yeah.
And that's like, you bring this up, but like, there's like certain confidence you have that this person will give you anything you ask.
MashaAllah. Yeah.
Like, they're, for the sake of Allah, for that one sentence, they'll do anything.
MashaAllah.
Even if it means giving a piece of the Kaaba cloth. Mm-hmm. If it's for Allah, it's good. If a student comes to me and asks me for my Kaaba piece of cloth, I'll do dua for you, brother. Right? May Allah give you something. I ain't gonna cut my piece of Kaaba cloth and give it to you. Like, you have to be like my like greatest student of all time or something.
Yeah.
But it's just how their hearts were.
MashaAllah. It's so beautiful, man. How was your graduation?
Graduation was emotional. Moinus Patel, rahmatullahi alayhi, it was the last time he attended. My father was there, and my mom and the rest of my family couldn't come. Tickets were too expensive. But I remember after, the turban was being put on my head, and Mufti Alauddin cracked a joke on stage, because each teacher was doing one turn. Mm-hmm. And he cracked a joke, and Mufti Radha, after he put the turban on my head, he slapped me on the back of my head in front of everybody, right? And people came to me afterwards and they were like, these two people, what they did, and like the informality they presented, it means they see you differently.
MashaAllah.
Like when I go to Mufti Radha and these ustads and I visit Zakariyya, for me, I just like to make them smile. And oftentimes it's at my own expense, and which is fine, is because it's good for my tarbiyah and it's good for my humility and breaking my nafs. But just to be able to put a smile on my teacher's face, because I know there's no dunya I can give them because they don't care for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no deen I can give them. It's because they know it all better than I. What can I give them? Maybe a smile. That's all I can do. So like I'll go and they'll crack on my single status, or they'll crack on like how I talk or whatever. For me, it's okay. For me, I take it as honor. Like, it's fidaka abi wa ummi, right? Like that love and appreciation and admiration I have for them is, I don't know even if I'll ever truly understand how much they mean to me and how much I care for them. And I don't know if they'll ever really understand how much of an impact they've had. And I think it's part of their sincerity that they don't even think about these things, because I'm but one of the thousands they have touched.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
You pick Qari Noman, product of the same Mufti Azim, Mufti Minhaj, Maulana Mufti Hisham. Where do you want to go? Abdullah Sayyid. Just in your city, everyone is a trickle of some benefit. You take Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda, a completely different person, student of Mufti Naeem, who's a student of Mufti Radha.
MashaAllah.
Like these people there, Allah has given them such acceptance without social media. For Allah is their PR, and for the Malaika are the ones that are putting their love in the hearts of people.
MashaAllah.
It's just built different, man. It was just built different.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I mean, something I've noticed, mashallah, you visit your teachers regularly.
Yeah.
MashaAllah. It's something that's really important as well. And the one thing I wanted to ask you was, throughout your journey, what were some of the struggles, the sacrifices, and things that you had to go through in order to continue your pursuit of knowledge? I know you spoke a little bit about the loneliness aspect.
I think the loneliness aspect, for me, I think it was just throughout, right? Because like once I left home, I left home.
Yeah.
I came back to New Jersey for a year while studying, outside of studying, living in different towns and communities. I think the loneliness aspect has always been a big struggle. And then you just pull through it, you push through it. You do it for the community, you do it for Allah's sake, you do it for this idea that something bigger is going to come out of this.
Yeah.
You meet friends, you meet people throughout your journey. But as we all know, and we've been close once upon a time, we still are, but obviously that day-to-day relationship is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
And the inevitable nature is what?
Absolutely.
That everyone just drifts away. Besides that, there's the health struggle, there's the food struggle, there's the language struggle. And it's also like sometimes you're studying and it doesn't digest, it doesn't go down. You want to quit. And at times it's even safety. I remember there was a time when the whole madrasa there was a whole xenophobia slaughtering happening all across South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And we were under lockdown. But beyond all of these things, I think that the reminder of our purpose was the key thing that pushed us through.
MashaAllah.
And also just seeing the teachers and understanding that this is someone I want to be like,
Mm-hmm.
is what truly helped us through those things. But beyond that, alhamdulillah, you had food challenges. The taste of madrasa food quality is obviously much less than anywhere else. And you have, I remember in one of the madrasas I studied in, it was brick cold, man. It was brick cold.
Oh, yeah.
And the heater broke down and the whole institute didn't have a heater. I remember that night, 3 jackets, 2 blankets, and I was taking heat from an iron.
Oh, wow. SubhanAllah.
speaking about that, like mother's food.
Yeah. MashaAllah.
Like, बड़ी दूर से आया हूँ, बड़ी देर से आया हूँ, बड़ी दूर से आया हूँ, बड़ी देर से आया हूँ, हो अताए खास जो होती है आम. What people get on a daily basis of their mother's food is what we would freeze for 4 months. And it was old, quality was down, it was watery, but my mother's hand had touched it.
MashaAllah.
And that was manna and salwa for us.
MashaAllah.
There was a time where the biggest thing in life we wanted was just a good meal.
Yeah.
And we'd be happy. And today we're sad sitting in the best restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And that ingratitude. And weather was a problem. I remember doing wudu in the morning times, cold water, taking showers, and it's the sharing of showers, the bathrooms, all of that aspect of just, laundry. The laundry, madrasa had its own laundromat, but it's like mass washing clothes.
Yeah.
So you wash your own clothes with your own hands. Today I had a stain on my thobe yesterday, so I was washing with my hands, and I thought to myself, I was like, I don't know if my students have ever washed clothes with their own hands. I was like, that's an experience. I think that you have to go through these things, wash with your hands. Like, you really, there's a whole technique. Yeah. You beat the clothes. It's pretty soothing, to be honest with you.
It's therapeutic.
It's therapeutic. Yeah. Cooking food, trying to make something, replicating, small things, man. And it was simpler times. It was good times, but we moved past it. We learned from it, and we hope to grow.
Inshallah. And, how was it going back as a graduate student? And then now, in recent years, mashallah, visiting, how is it going back as someone who's completed their studies or has graduated and going back to their alma mater?
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, since I graduated, pretty much every year I'm there.
Mashallah.
There's sometimes I'm there for as long as 3 weeks. Yeah. And there's been times I've been there as short as 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And it takes a day to go and a day to come back. The teachers light up like no tomorrow.
MashaAllah.
Their happiness, their excitement, their affection. I think about how their first reaction to me weeks up until I go there.
MashaAllah.
I think, okay, I'm going to go walk in. Mochok is going to see me like this, and Mochok's going to react. He's going to do a double take, and Mufti Radha is going to put his head back. I was like, what comment may they say when they see me? They always make fun of me about the marriage thing. Always. It's like a mother's staple joke.
Yeah.
Right? And you see all of these things. And they'll come and they'll ask you about what's going on in your country. Some will be like, oh, we watched this video of yours. We saw this of yours. And they'll give their support. They'll joke around. They'll talk about things. Sometimes they'll stop their class.
MashaAllah.
And I remember when I was studying Tajweed by Qari Saleh, there's some kids from Malaysia that came. And he stopped class and he was talking to them. And then he turned towards me and he said, if you ever visit, he's like, also stop class. So I go there specific during class and I'm like, yeah, you give your word. But, the younger teachers, they don't treat you like they it's the respect. And for me, I get clowned on a lot, which I'm eternally grateful for. I'm genuinely grateful that my name even exits their mouth. That I'm not even worthy of that. It's good for my nafs. It's good for my tarbiyah. It's good for everything for me on a personal level. But the thing that hurts the most is seeing the aging of the teachers.
SubhanAllah.
Seeing Mufti Alauddin in that cancerous state. And his beard had shrunk. And his body had shriveled.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing him there was heart-wrenching. Seeing Mufti Radha complain as he lifted his leg, seeing Osman Bewati after his heart attack, seeing Maulana Abdul Quddus with a full white beard, seeing Mona do that become completely weak. It reminds you that at the end, we all must go. But man, these people that are about to go, they've been ready to go for a while now. They're just waiting for their time. They already have their ticket in their hand. And they know that they fulfill their obligation. But for us, like I turn back and I'm like, we had these examples of these giants. And I turned to my students the other day and I was like, I think the reason why we're in such a bad state is because y'all have us as an example. And we had them. So that's the heartbreaking part. But I'll always tell the teacher, and like the relationship is so open. I'm like, I'm coming to have breakfast at your house, lunch at yours, dinner's at yours. And I just want to go and have the barakah of that food.
Mashallah.
And they're, again, like so respectful, so nice, so chill, so easygoing. Mufti Radha, I just dropped by in his house for breakfast in the morning. One of the kids had fruit smileys.
Mm-hmm.
No fruit smileys?
Yeah.
Little fruit gushers. So I was sitting next to Mufti Radha. I was like, Hazrat. I'm like, yeah. I was like, these are American fruits. So I put like 2 in his plate. He ate 1 and then chucked the other to the guy next to him. Like, what the heck is this fruit smiley? But I've done a lot of like antics with the teachers too, like, you know, and they've got in trouble for those things and stuff. And some things it's like they see it and they're like, all right, this guy's just being a kid, right? Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in Masjid al-Aqsa, Mufti Radha was with me, where I was with Mufti Radha actually. And I was like, they gave us baseball caps.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, like, you know, the whole tour group, they gave us like baseball caps, like everyone.
Yeah.
I was like, Mufti, I was like, you got to put this on. And he was like, what? I was like, yeah. I was like, you got to put this on. Put it on. I kind of like slanted it to the side. So he looked straight G, man. Mufti. And he had his like stick and he was just chilling like that with his like topi. And like, so out of the dunya, like just doesn't notice. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, do what you got to do. I'm thinking of things.
Yeah.
Like
sure. And something interesting, can you speak a little bit about visiting scholars in other areas and spending time with them? Because mashallah, you're a travel agent yourself, caravan, hajj and umrah, mashallah. And you have been to so many different countries. So if you could just speak about it a little bit and just share some of the stories with us.
I think it's super important to, one thing is your own teachers, right? So for every hafiz, every Aalim, everyone who's been to a madrasa, go visit your roots. Things happen in the madrasa or something that you didn't like or you heard about. I think we're all older now. Go back and have that conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of the people will be very receptive and acknowledge the shortcomings. You know, while madrasas made their mistakes, they were also like the first madrasas, right? Mm-hmm. The first batch is bound to make miscalculations and misjudgments. But I think it's incredibly important to visit your teachers, the happiness they get. I stay connected to as many of my teachers as I possibly can, especially from Zakariyya or England. I try to. If a teacher of mine's in town or if somebody calls me, the other day, one of my teachers, Maulana Arif Desai from Canada, reached out for a program or something. And like, to me, you said this time, that time, even if I'm working at that time, I'm going to tell my masjid, I need to take out time because I need to do this for my teacher. And nothing else. That's it. Like my teacher asks me and it's done. At the same time, there's all these amazing, remarkable scholars around. Like Mufti Taha Quran that we met.
Mashallah.
And Mufti Taha Quran, again, built a very long relationship with him over the last decade. Did I remember one time I called him and he just starts talking about quantum physics, man. Mashallah. And about, you know, string theory and about parallel universes. And I'm just blowing my mind away after like 30 minutes. I'm like, Mufti, I'm like, where the heck do you read all this stuff? Mashallah. He's like, you know, when I'm at the airport and I have time, I just pick up a book on quantum physics and I just read it during my flights. I was like, what? He's like, it's light reading. I was like, what do you mean it's light reading? It's quantum physics, man. And he's sitting there. And then he told me one time too, he's like, listen, I'm only answering your calls. He's like, I don't answer a lot of calls. But I've met him in front of the Kaaba. We were just at his home a few months ago when he passed away. He actually gave me his 40 Hadith book. He sat outside with us for like 3 hours and he was talking again with the students. He was just, these students, even Mufti Mink, bro, like Mufti Mink came and Mufti Mink was just absolutely amazing.
MashaAllah.
There was a person we met by the name of Maulana Makki. He's a Khalifa of Maulana Zakariya rahmatullah alayhi. Elderly man. But like the man's life was like truly calculated based on salah.
MashaAllah.
Everything in life he structured around prayer, but the man had no watch.
MashaAllah.
Like his biological clock, his body automatically knew when it was salah time.
MashaAllah.
And he told us, he was like, man, just talk to me about salah, I'll be the happiest person. Like Maulana Yasir was not capping last night when he said that. 5 minutes with the man will bring you into tears.
MashaAllah.
I swear to God.
MashaAllah.
I swear this man had our hearts melted. The youngsters around us, everyone was imagine going to see lions and everything. These youngsters from America, and then later on being like, yo, we're okay with changing our plans or whatever. We enjoyed spending time with Maulana Makki more than anything else. Like even till today, they talk about it. And then like the mashayikh you'll see, whether it's in Uzbekistan or whether it's the one you see in Palestine, Jordan, Sheikh Shoaib Arnaoot or Sheikh Muhammed Awwamah or Allama Ishaq, I met in Bangladesh, crossed rivers to go get ijazah from him, crossed rice fields, went in boats to get ijazah from him. You see all of these scholars, right? And you see all of these people. And like, why do we go? What's the whole point of it? I love these people, but I'm not from them. But perhaps I will get innocence by association. Perhaps just by sitting in that company, some mercy will fall on me. Some dua of theirs will come to me. And I think, Imam Umar Sulaiman was at Isra during our Dhul Hijjah series, and he said something really nice I liked. He told our kids, he said, always keep a door open. Always keep a door open between you and Allah. Have a relationship with someone that you can talk to. Have a relationship with someone whose dua you can get. Have a relationship with someone who will make you a spiritual better than yourself. And Maulana Choksi told us one time, he says, sometimes we look for the most perfect and amazing and greatest scholar, especially when you're in an area with a lot of scholars, then you want the elite because like everyone else you've already experienced.
Yeah.
So he says, if somebody says that, you know what, I'm only gonna, true light is sunlight. All other lights so if the sun sets and then the moon comes out and the person says, no. He's like, I want the sunlight. That's true light. No, I know the sunlight's true light, but at this moment, there's no sun. You got to stick with the moon. If the moon sets and there's only stars and you're like, no, I want the moonlight. I understand the moon is, but right now there's no moon. So take the stars. If it's a cloudy day, there's no stars, nothing, and you just have a candle. You're like, no, what kind of light is this? I'm used to seeing the sun's light. Yes, you're used to seeing the sun's light, but also there isn't this darkness that there is today. So in this darkness, even a candle is worth keeping with you. So in this darkness, in the dunya that we are in, and the fitnas that we're in, even a person who has a candle flicker, and that can help ignite something in you, light in you, stick with them, connect with them, stay in touch with them, and don't lose that person.
Jazakallah khairan for that, Mufti. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Masjid Al-Aqsa in the Haramain. Alhamdulillah, I was fortunate enough to travel with Caravan Hajj and Umrah to Masjid Al-Aqsa. And something interesting, I remember we got there and it was Asr Salah, and you were just like in the biggest rush on the planet. You took a shower, you ironed your clothes in like under 2 minutes. Got ready and I was like, oh, what's going on? Like I was really tired, and you I remember we both ran to the masjid, and it was time for salah, and the imam pushes you forward. MashaAllah, may Allah reward him.
Probably disappointing to you.
I
came from all the way from America.
No. I'll be honest. The first time I was like, oh man, MashaAllah, like, man, Mufti Saab got some status here, like cool. And then I want to say by the 6th or 7th occurrence of this, I said, man, forget this. I'm going to the other masjid in Aqsa. I can't listen to this guy that much, man.
Trust me, I would feel the same way if I traveled with me and all the way to Aqsa and got me again. I'd be like, bro, I'll pay you to not leave. I remember that.
How did you gain closeness to the Imam of Aqsa?
Ultimate credit goes to my father.
MashaAllah.
When I mentioned about my father's, like my father does good. He doesn't tell us. Never. I remember going to a madrasa one time and the people were showing me like where the bread is made and like the minaret and like the water pump. I'm like, yo, this is kind of like a very detailed view of your institute. I just want to see like what the kids are studying. And they're like, you don't know why we're showing you these things. I was like, no, they're like, your grandma built this, your dad built this, and we're just showing you that these are the things like, usually donors like to see things are still working if anything needs to be fixed. So dad doesn't tell me anything. He just tells me, go meet the imam. That's all he says to me. And I think he messaged the imam that my son is coming. Or I don't know if he messaged, WhatsApp wasn't as big internationally that time. The imam was just like, the moment he found out who I was, he was just absolutely very appreciative, respectful, and all of that. And then he told me later, he said, I'll never forget your father. And I was like, why? He's like, your father was very kind, was very nice, and all of this XYZ thing. And he's like, your father's done kindness. He's like, and because of that, I can never forget you,
MashaAllah.
Father.
MashaAllah.
And that's when I had also told him, I said, Mufti Radha is here. Please have Mufti Radha give a talk. So when I told him that, he said, it's done. So I told Mufti Radha that you have a lecture tomorrow in Arabic. Mufti Radha was like, I don't give a lecture in Arabic. I've never done it before. He's like, and it's Aqsa. He's like, I'm not going to do this. And I was like, Mufti, back when we were studying Ibn Majah, you told us a story that one time you went to Thana Bhawan, and it was the place where Maulana Shafi'i Thanwi led Salah, and you were asked to lead Salah, and out of shyness you said no. He said, then you told us you regret it till today. I was like, look, you're going to go back out of Aqsa and you're going to regret it till after that you didn't speak there. So he started cracking up, and then he gave that speech there. But Aqsa is just, it's and I credit Mufti Radha for this. I really credit Mufti Radha is because when I graduated, my dad wanted to give Mufti Radha a gift of Hajj. Mufti Radha's health wasn't able to do Hajj. So when I proposed it, he said, I can't do it, but I've never been to Aqsa. So he said, Mufti, let's go. And that's how Aqsa started. Then I went with you, and I went with a few other friends, and I went a few other times after. And it's just this place that provides you so much serenity. It provides. South Africans actually are always at Aqsa. That's like a South African thing now. Yeah. And just the peace of the masjid, the culture of the people, seeing the history, and being able to like just be transported, because Aqsa like gives you that vibes. Like you feel like
you go back in time.
You go back in time.
Literally, man. Inshallah.
You go back in time, man. Like you walk through those stones, you walk through those walls. You were with me, right, when we went and ate at that old like 500-year-old home through that little tunnel, right? You were there with me, with that guy with the big beard. Like, and just the hospitality.
MashaAllah. He had this guy literally had no food. He had no food. Like hard bread and something else, and he like hosted us. There's like a group of youngsters we were hanging out with the whole night.
Do you remember when one of those kids were like, we were the few that were like in Masjid Aqsa when everything was closed out, and we went to pray Dhuhr?
Yeah.
And the kid was like, we were the last like 6 in an ummah of 1.7 billion to pray here.
Yeah. It was really tough to hear.
That was it's may Allah make things easy across the world. It's I do encourage everyone to visit Masjid Aqsa, pray there, tour around, and appreciate the history and be part of the history there. I definitely encourage people to do that.
And tell us about, how many times have you gone for like Hajj and Umrah, roughly? Or when was your first Hajj and Umrah? When you were probably very young?
My parents grew up there, right?
Yeah.
So as a kid, they took us for Hajj. And it's interesting is because Maulana Badr Alam Qasmi in Mina, my dad used to tell me as a kid, in Mina, when I was in my ihram, he would tell other ulama there that, oh, look, Mufti Wasim is coming.
MashaAllah.
Like my father says this story all the time about Maulana Badr Qasim is this really big shot in Kuwait. He works for the Awqaf there and stuff. He's a senior scholar. So throughout those years, did Hajj or Umrah, tried to go every year as possible. And I see it as the way my father taught me about this. He said that when a student fails a test over and over again, they have to retake it. So how many times, I think even if one time is accepted, even if one ibadah is accepted, then there is some hope for my salvation. But my advice is stay connected to the house of Allah.
Mashallah.
There's a lot of ulama and scholars I've met there. Mufti Rafi Uthmani, done a lot of khidmat of Mufti Rafi Saab over there. In Hajj, Sheikh Yunus Jaunpuri did khidmat of him, and other scholars as well. But a longing for the haram of Makkah, Medina has had a tremendous impact on keeping my faith strong.
Mashallah.
And I think an absence of a relationship with Makkah and Medina takes a toll on your own relationship with Allah. And as long as in your heart you'll yearn to go to Makkah and Medina and to live in Medina and pass in Medina, you'll yearn for Jannah and want to do actions that are related to Jannah. But I think when you start scaling back and that becomes a secondary thing and you're like, I'll do it when I'm older, I think it has a big toll on your faith and iman.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. That's beautiful. So Mufti Saab, tell us about, you have such a unique project on your hands in what you've been working with your non-for-profit Isra Foundation, which started in 2014?
14, yeah.
14, mashallah. Can you share with us a little bit about what you guys are doing and what's happening in the Dallas area? Mashallah, I got to meet the great group of brothers, had the privilege of providing them some food and feeding them, and just that bond, and I don't know, there's so many cool things happening. I'll just let you speak about it, inshallah.
So Isra started back in 2014 from Chicago. And largely the idea was just connecting youth back with the deen. Very basic, very generic. With time, it evolved from providing Aalim classes up to the second year, or I think even third year, Arabic classes, programs. And while I was in Dallas, there was an organization called Roots by Ustad Abdul Rahman Murphy, Mufti Kamani, Sheikh Abdul Nasir, Jan Qalam and them. And they did something that was remarkable, which was that they were able to get a group of youth that were so distant from the deen that would never step into a masjid, but be able to come and change their lives.
MashaAllah.
And that served as a massive inspiration for me in what Ustad Abdul Rahman was doing, that in our side of the town, we need to create something as well, where I know we can't service the level that Ustad Abdul Rahman services on, because he has his unique approach and he has his style, and mashallah, he has a suhba of good mashayikh. But we decided that we want to work on the stage that is between what Roots is working on and the people that are in the masjid. There's still a chunk of youth that seldom visit the masjid, are still connected, but they have friends that are not connected. They have non-Muslim friends. They're dating. How do I bring them into an area where I can spend more time with them beyond my lecture? And even if I can't spend time with them, I can work on a group of people whose moral compass is good enough that they can help them in the same manner that I'd be able to help them. So we created this space. It all materialized, last year, same time, when we started our first program in person. We were under a tree in a park.
Pomegranate tree?
It wasn't pomegranate. It wasn't pomegranate. But you get the drift.
MashaAllah.
We couldn't even afford to give our students ice cream. It was coming out to $2 a person. We didn't have the money.
MashaAllah.
Then may Allah really reward Imam Nadeem Bashir of Epic Masjid.
MashaAllah.
The man is a gem and a wali and an inspiration. Imam Asir Subedar, excellent people. Brother Nafis Patan, who got me into Plano, he was also a very strong supporter of this. Imam Nadeem Bashir goes to me, he says, Wasim, the pandemic is going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's no in-person halakas.
Yeah.
He says, Wasim, stores are closed, everything. Greg Abbott decides to drop the mask mandate and all of the other stuff. or I don't think he dropped the mask mandate. I think he had restaurant closure. It was something that he had changed his regulations on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was December time, and there was a coffee shop. And Imam Nadim said, you can rent the coffee shop. The person was very inspired and motivated by Imam Nadim. He brokered a deal, and we used to rent a coffee shop, and we used to call kids over there, and we used to have this halaqah.
MashaAllah.
Began with like 15 kids. And when we ended, it was like 70 plus.
MashaAllah.
Like people on the floor, people everywhere. Week before Ramadan, we saw a spot, and we tried different places. We picked up the spot. The place was broken down, shattered. The same youngsters that you've seen,
MashaAllah.
they literally cleaned every single thing in that place.
MashaAllah.
They helped repaint it. They helped set it up, lead Taraweeh, lead all of that. I mean, even like Taraweeh by us, right? We had many kids who never touched their Quran in years.
Allah.
And maybe they're reciting quarter juz. Maybe they're reading from inside the Quran.
Yeah, MashaAllah.
But they connected with their Quran more than they would have otherwise.
MashaAllah.
Sisters who are struggling with their faith or their iman. Kids, I've had kids who come to me and they said that if we didn't have this halaqah or this talk, I would have left Islam. And you're just like, since when? Like, what did I say that made that big of a difference, or what?
Yeah.
But that environment that's provided, and we've had so many scholars, Mashayikh, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, Umar Sulaiman, visiting scholars and people who have come. And for me, it's like, it's small, it's 4,200 square foot, but for me, it's like, it's something for me to build for these youth that few years from now I can step away from, have another younger scholar oversee it, look after it, and create this chain that it lasts long after me. That is not doesn't last for me or just with me, but it lasts long after me. And the mahal is created. You have kids, there's people who drive for the program and they drive an hour to come from Denton or Arlington. These are like an hour away. And they'll come over there, they'll get that mahal or that environment, and they'll just have that feeling that we did something for our deen. And I think it's important to provide a place where you can not only do tarbiyah of our kids, but also their non-Muslim friends. Where are you ever going to be exposed to give da'wah to your youth? We talk about youth work, but how can you work on the youth if their friends are all non-Muslims who are drinking, doing drugs, doing XYZ things?
Mm-hmm.
We have, alhamdulillah, in my friend group or my student group, these kids, they play soccer, they do. The Hindus in their soccer group, like they'll talk about me with these people, and these Hindus are like, yo, we want to meet him.
MashaAllah.
And great kids, excellent people. But it's the effect. And sometimes the kids are like, yeah, Mufti, we were talking about you. I'm just thinking, like, what would you be saying? Like, what is there like? But subhanAllah, they felt that bringing that discussion was enough for that person to have interest in the deen and to come. So I think, and then plus the whole sister side, we have Isra has something called Nafisa, which is run by alimas and run by sisters themselves. They need their place too, man. Our sisters have been neglected forever. Like, we were talking yesterday about, I don't know how sisters do it, man.
Yeah.
Just attending the masjid without the same advantages that brothers have.
Mm-hmm.
How they keep their spirituality motivated is beyond me, and I salute them. So we've carved that space out for them as well. And alhamdulillah, we're working with the local masjids, local communities, and we provide programs for college kids, young professionals who have little kids, man. When people get married and they have kids, they drop off from the masjid. There's this cycle that breaks with the youth. After a while, the youth stop coming.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to ask ourselves, why does this keep happening?
Yeah.
And it's going to continue happening until if we keep this deen only fixated that da'wah and teaching is revolving around scholars, there's going to be this big void, because there are people whose reach I will never have. And the only reach I have is the people I can reach. They have to reach out. So it's about creating that culture of people feeling the responsibility and the need to reach out and the need to give da'wah, the need to represent their deen, to create that value. So that's what we're in the hopes of. We have a Hufaz association with over 150 Hufaz. Again, there's still a lot of work that we can do with it. But again, I think that we need to take a step back as Muslim communities when we're working, especially someplace like Chicago, where you have masjids down the street everywhere. Like, I need to go back and see what is lacking. What's the point if you're doing a high school halaqah and so is the masjid next to you and the masjid next to it and the masjid, you're all doing the same thing. Okay, they're all doing high school. Is anyone doing something preteen? No, let's focus on preteen. Okay, but another masjid is going to copy it. When they copy it, I'll move on to another segment of the age group. I'm okay with people copying what I'm doing. But I believe that we have to be more smarter when we start focusing on our community instead of just youth programs. Instead of just, people tell me, Mufti, we want to call you for a youth program. Okay, what does that mean? Which youth age group are you calling? I'm sitting in a lecture where there's 8-year-olds all the way till like 28-year-olds. There is no way I can maintain that crowd in an intimate setting. If it's a conference or something, it's a different story. But an intimate gathering, you can't. So I think refocusing, strategizing, and on that group, developing a local crowd of people, seeing what the friend cliques are, identifying them, worrying about them, making the youngsters realize themselves how important. I mean, even last night, the youngster that was sitting with us, I was very keen and interested, even though I was messing around or joking with him, but I was interested to see how he would react and what his generation, his friend groups does. Because at the end of the day, his time with me is a few minutes. His time with his friends is a lifetime. It's much longer. And I think that we have to restructure these relationships and make them more meaningful and provide a place that has this non-judgment zone. We've had kids who are drunk, drugs. We've had all kids who've hit their parents and then come. Like people who've been kicked out of their homes. A plethora of situations go on, and it takes time for kids to build that trust. I also advise that one of the worst things any community can do is let go of their imam, unless it's some ethical situation or something like that. Because when I did my research on the causes of atheism amongst American Muslim youth, one of the leading causes was when the imam leaves. Because it makes the youth feel detached from the masjid. When they no longer come to the masjid, then their link to Allah is broken. But Jazakallah khair for Ahsan Jaza for having me. May Allah reward and bless you. I've given a lot of lectures, a lot of talks, and a lot of interviews, but never something like this. Definitely I'm not deserving, and my story is nothing. But I hope the things that I have mentioned about the teachers and the people's feet that I have sat at, that you take something back from there. You make dua for them, especially Mufti Alauddin rahmatullahi alayhi, who passed away, and all of our asatidha in Darul Uloom Zakariyya and all the madaris and all the masajid and everywhere around, all the good that they're doing. May Allah accept it. May Allah accept the intentions that you started this whole project and you started this all these interviews and the effort and the dedication and the sincerity you put behind it. May Allah truly reward you, bless you, make this a means of benefit. I know for myself, for sure, I'll be listening to all the episodes, inshallah, and I'll be encouraging all my students to listen to the different scholars. And I'm sure there's so much for me to learn from other scholars, appreciate their journeys, and for my students to do the very same. So I really want to thank you for this work that you have done.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, Mufti Saab, for your kind words, and may Allah Ta'ala reward you and bless you. But barakah and afiyah in all of your endeavors. Let Isra grow and become a staple in the community in Dallas and communities to come, inshallah. Again, Jazakallah khairan. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate you so much. And inshallah, until next time.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum.